Okay, we're going to continue our discussion of Leonora Carrington's second short story, The White Rabbits, in just a minute when everyone comes back into class. For those of you who are just joining us, we read two short stories by Leonora Carrington, and we might have a chance to read a little bit about her since we're going to do we're going to extend the class to the third hour. So first we'll finish our discussion, and then maybe we can look at some of the links that I posted on top of the shared notes, and we can take a look at a funny article that gives a little more context about the story. By the way, let me post the link to the last class. Hang on just a second here. I'm going to have to, give me just a minute here, everyone. I'm going to have to go back to the last class and copy and paste it because it disappeared. 1 second. Copy, whoops. Okay, I'm going to put this link in our chat window in just a minute. And then in the meantime, when everyone comes back to the class, we'll continue our discussion. So, in our chat window right now, you should be able to see a link to our notes. There you go. If you can't see it, just give it a second because it's a little bit slow. I can see it, so you should be able to see it. And I'm going to share the short story with you on screen. Okay, when you click that link, you'll see this. There you go. And this has the face of Leonora Carrington there. Oh, for some reason, this looks like it's backwards. It shouldn't be backwards. I'll correct that in just a second. Hang on. But you can see her face as a young woman and later in life. And you can also see some of her sculptures in this. So you see some, and we can go to Google Images. I can show you a few others. There was an error loading your app. Uh-oh. I don't know what's going on. So hopefully everyone can see what I'm sharing here. On the second page, you've got our table of contents. You've got a bunch of links. So I think we're going to read one of those. We're going to read one of those articles, or at least look at the beginning of it, to get a little bit more background about her after we discuss our second story. So we got two texts. The first text is The Debutante, and the second text is White Rabbits, the story we just read. And if you want to read that story or follow along, it's on page 6 of our document. There you go. You can probably see it on screen now. So we're not actually going to read it now because we've already read it. We're just going to discuss it. Okay, so it'll take a minute for Yuki to come back into class, and Ahmed, if you're out there, and Anton and Anatoly, feel free to come back in. You can also use the chat window if you like. I'll be checking the chat window as well. So what I'm going to do is, while I'm waiting for you to return, I am going to see if I can open the link. I'm going to see if I can open that link for you. To the article that I posted at the top of the page. Okay, so maybe I'll start reading the article until everyone comes back to class. Okay, give me just a second to open it up. It always takes a second to load. Alrighty then, so it's almost loaded. Alrighty then. So I'm waiting for everyone to come back to class because we had to cut the class in half. So while I'm waiting, what I'm going to do is share an article with you about the author, and I'll begin reading the article, and then when we all come back to class, we'll pick up our discussion where it left off. By the way, if you want to follow along, this article is on page 2 of our shared notes document. It's called Nazis, Nannies, and Hair Omelets. Leonora Carrington looks back on her extraordinary life. This is an interview that she did, and that might serve as a good context for the short stories that we just read. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to share my screen with you. Give me just a second. And you can click on the link if you want. Oh, wait, maybe I've got someone here. Ah, Yuki's back. There you go.
Hello again.
Okay. So I was just about to start reading an interview with her, but let's finish up our discussion first. So, because I cut you off, because I'm not supposed to go over the time limit like that. So, if there's a class open, I should open it. So you were saying this sentimental. You ended by saying that there's a kind of sentimental quality. When
Yes,
you say
some kind of sentimental and humorous feeling lives in this story, in first story and second story, all the time in this story from first to end. That fascinates us maybe. In spite of the awful storyline, I think. Well, so I feel that reminds me the Beetlejuice, such a scissor hands.
So, but Beetlejuice was pretty much a comedy, right?
Yes, it sounds more comedy.
This doesn't really feel like a comedy to me. There are parts of it that are comedic, but it doesn't really feel like a comedy. It feels different. And I'm not sure. I'm kind of uncomfortable through most of the story.
But maybe first story here I don't remember. The Debutante, you can think it as you can regard it as a comedy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Second story, I don't know. The second story you can think it's comedy, but you even second story you think it as a comedy. So that's a common with the Tim Burton films, no?
Could be. Let's see what Anton thinks. Anton, Yuki's comparing this with Tim Burton, specifically the movie Beetlejuice.
And Scissorhands.
And Edward Scissorhands, this, which I agree with you in a way. It's got a what we call phantasmagoric quality. Do you know that word, phantasmagoric?
Phantasmagoric.
Phantasmagoric is a mixture of fantasy, and we usually think of gore like blood. So something that is both fantastic, fantasy-based, and yet kind of violent and kind of bloody, phantasmagorical.
Partly, it also looks like Edgar Allan Poe's stories.
What? Edgar Allan Poe?
Yes.
Ah, yeah. Well, you've got a lot of ravens. That's true. Anton, what do you think? How do these stories make you feel when you read them?
I think it's quite bizarre story.
Bizarre, yeah.
Yeah, difficult to really comprehend the all of the events that are happening in this story.
Do you think that she wants us to comprehend the events? Because I have a feeling that she doesn't care if we understand or not. I have that impression. Do you think we're meant to comprehend exactly what's going on, or do you think we're meant to just witness the strangeness of the story?
Yeah, maybe the second.
I mean, I get the feeling that it's not important why things happen, because if it were, again, it's just my impression, it seems to me that we'd somehow return and have our questions answered. But the more we go along in the story, the more questions we seem to have. Like it never ends until we end up with an image which makes no sense at all. This woman who's trying to trap the other woman, and then she's not really trying to trap her because the other woman leaves freely by making some excuse, and the other woman literally falls apart in the doorway, nicely waving goodbye, you know? I mean...
I think it's a comedy.
Maybe it is a comedy. Maybe it is.
Yeah, it's reminded me of some old horror movies about living dead that were not really comedies, but they were unintentionally funny.
Yeah, like pretty much all the old...
George Romero, yeah?
No, but I think he means the ones from the 40s, right?
Oh.
You mean like the really old ones?
Not really, maybe from the 80s.
Oh, really? Like what?
Dan Novano.
I don't remember. There were a lot of such movies, B horror movies.
It's got this. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and also Yuki, you said Edgar Allan Poe. Well, it's not a coincidence. Edgar Allan Poe was he was embraced by the symbolists. They loved him, the symbolist poets, which was a little bit before the surrealists, because he was the one writer who he wrote a little bit of theory. He wasn't a theorist, but he wrote a bit of theory. He was always writing these philosophy of essays. So one was the philosophy of composition. Uh-oh.
But
Hold on a
his work
second.
is more like to be a detective, yeah?
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I was rudely interrupted by someone. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. Maybe it was the cat. He wrote the philosophy of composition. I'm talking about Edgar Allan Poe. And the French poets loved this because he had a very unusual way to write. And he also, not very many people wrote about the process of writing. It was kind of new. In the philosophy of composition, he made it very clear, Edgar Allan Poe made it very clear, that the act of writing had to be at the same time as the act of reading. You had to write and read in this. It should take the same amount of time. So when you sit down to read, it should be the exact same amount of time that it took to sit down and write. And
Yes,
so he wrote it, and so that led to the idea, that was kind of an early form of spontaneous writing in automatic prose. So that's...
His works make us think about it. We cannot stop thinking about it after reading the story. I feel the same. I feel the same things from this story.
And also the way they flow together, the way that there's a special fluidity that happens when you write without stopping. And her stories remind me of that too. They seem to flow together, and yet they don't wrap up like a normal plot. We expect there to be a resolution. And there is a resolution, but it's strange. It's hard to place, right? So it makes me think that, anyway, so just to say...
there is a clear end of story, clear ending of a story, but it's quite strange. That's why we cannot stop thinking about it after reading it.
Well, here's a picture of her. Let me show you what she looks like. There she is. She died 3 years ago. There's a picture of her in her studio in Mexico. Can you see her?
After woman.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's her. And if you like, we can quickly read through this article, which was written 2 years before she passed away, to give
This
a little
picture
bit.
is drawn by her.
Of course, yes. She's
Oh,
mostly,
she also drew a picture.
maybe she's more known for her visual arts than her writing, perhaps. So yes, that's one of her. But you can Google, you can see her sculptures. They're the ones that are maybe more known because they're in public places around the world. And if you, hey, here's the thing: did you ever see the movies by Guillermo del Toro?
Hmm?
Did you see Pan's Labyrinth, Yuki?
I don't know. Could you repeat again?
Did you ever see Pan's Labyrinth?
Pan's Labyrinth.
Hold on a second. Let's put this on the board here. Labyrinth. That's spelled wrong, but Google will correct my spelling. That's the great thing about Google.
I saw it.
You saw it, so you remember the look at the creatures here. Let me show you. Hang on a second here.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, yeah, but I saw it.
But these are obviously influenced by her. These pictures here. Let me show you. Let me show you. Can we get this a little bigger? Hold on. And also, I guess Hellboy as well, because he directed Hellboy, and the creatures are kind of similar a little bit. Hellboy's from the comic book, but there's some overlap.
Oh.
So here's one. Gotta wait for it to load. Oh, this is taking forever. Anyway, there you go. Now you can see it. So there's one. This is from the movie.
It looks like the Russian famous film called V.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it is short in the time of Soviet Union, but it's a kind of horror and strange atmosphere. It's very this is very similar. Don't you think so, Anton? Do you know?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you know.
I want to show you a picture of that, and then I want to show you some of her sculptures, just quickly. Oh, look, she had a Siamese cat. All the cool people like cats. Hold on a second. Let me see. Oh, this is so slow. Hold on a second. There we go, sculptures. So I want to take a look at some of her sculptures so we can see. Let's go here to sculpture. Like this one. Here you go. Let's take a look at this one.
Oh.
Let's make this one big.
She also made a statue. Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. It's a little bit small. Sorry. Let's sculpture.
Oh.
But I'm showing you this because I can't help but think that Guillermo del Toro was influenced by these sculptures because she lived like more than half her life in Mexico, and I don't know, is he Mexican? I don't remember where he's from. I don't know if I think he's Mexican, or I can't remember if he's Mexican or Argentinian. But anyway, here's a picture. It's a little small. Can you see it? Remember those triangle faces that we saw at the graphic at the top of the document? So you can see the sculptures here. And here's another one. It's the detail.
It looks like a beetle. Animals.
And there's another one from Mexico City.
Her works, atmosphere of her works, her painting is similar to her story. That
looks
her
like
story.
It's very
yes, it's very similar.
Well, let's take a look at this. Maybe we get a little bit of background here. I'll read. Hold on a second. Someone's interrupting me. Just 1 second. Hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. Sorry. Okay.
Could you paste the link of the page?
Well, all the links are there in the document,
Okay.
but we're going to do this one first. We're going to do the obituary because maybe that's a little shorter.
Okay.
So let's look at this one, actually. Give me just a second. Because this one has, I read this, hold on a second, I don't know what's going on here.
You mean the fourth link? Yeah. Second, first.
Okay, I have
found it. Okay.
I have to open this here. Give me a second because this
I-
loads a little bit
I
slowly.
paste the link. Okay.
But let's make sure you have the right link because I'm not sure I had. Wait, let's wait for this to load. Give me a second here. Oh, I didn't know I had to have this open, but now I know because apparently someone changed my links. So the obituary I was going to read is not the obituary that's here, but give me a second here. But this one's better.
Okay. I see.
Give me a second here. I'm trying to scroll down to the second page. It's not letting me scroll. This is why people shouldn't change links, because changing links is bad. Okay, so I think it's Leonora Carrington's obituary. There we go. I think that's one from the Telegraph. Okay, got it. We got the right one now. Look at this. Let's open the Telegraph. Now we have to wait 2 hours for it to load, of course. Ah, there we go. Now it's opening. I'm telling you, I've got to find a solution. This Google Docs.
Why it takes so long time?
Because of the Hangout. The Hangout just consumes your CPU, and I really don't. I don't know what the solution is.
The power of CPU is not enough.
I don't know. I have a good computer. It should be fine.
With the...
Okay, this is it. Leonora Carrington, who has died aged 94, led a life almost as picaresque, and surreal as her art. Born in Britain, she eloped with Max Ernst, that's the surrealist painter, Max Ernst, and hung out with Picasso and Dali. Fled the Nazis, escaped from a Spanish psychiatric hospital, and later settled in Mexico. You know, the average stuff that you do. Where she built a reputation as one of the most original and visionary British artists and writers of the 20th century. So let's read a little bit about Leonora Carrington. And look, you've got some images of her sculptures there for you as well.
She's Jewish, no?
I don't know. I don't think so. Well, let's read this. Want to read, Yuki?
Okay. In her memoir, down below, she described how after
Ernst
was interned by the French and then by the Nazis, she had a nervous breakdown, refused to eat and fled to Spain, where she was
incarcerated
in the asylum. The event described brutal institutional therapies, sexual assault, hallucinatory drugs, and indescribable feels are horrifying, but it was never clear what was real and what's surreal.
So this is in her own account of her life, in her memoir, right? When she's describing what happened. I should mention something. Remember the story, the Debutante that we read? Remember
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Well, apparently she wrote that story when she was going to a real ball, her
Mhm.
own ball, and she wrote that story because she was bored. And at the ball, she met a man who was 25 years older than she was, and he was a famous painter. So instead of meeting I guess it was going to be the king of England, she decided to elope with the painter Max Ernst, whom she met at her coming out party, her ball. And that's the story that we read. That's the story that she wrote when she was bored and trying to get out of her party. But she met her husband there. So just to let you know what happened. Here, later on, her husband was taken prisoner, basically. And then she went through these events. Well, Anton, do you want to read? Want to continue?
Yeah, okay. In the earlier version, she describes a sexual assault by a gang of Spanish soldiers whose attempts at rape she fends off heroically until they finally give up, exhausted. In the amended version, the soldiers rape her one after the other before casting her out alone.
Keep going.
Some have suggested that at least some of the story should not be understood literally, but as magic realism, a response to her own mental state and events at the time. The sense of a hybrid world, half recognizable, half fantasy, was characteristic of her playful and vividly colored paintings as well, many of them populated by strange and slightly
Menacing.
menacing figures. Elongated women in big cloaks, many armed lizard snakes, creatures half human, half wolf, people turning into birds, faces within bodies, often combined with again occult or religious symbols.
Right. Menacing means threatening. So some of the figures are threatening, scary in some way. Well, continue. Let's to the bottom here.
Leonora Carrington built up a massive international reputation, especially in America and Mexico. But in her native Britain, she was comparatively neglected. Last year saw the first major exhibition of her work in Britain for 20 years, despite her acknowledged importance as one of the few female exponents of surrealism.
As well as being the last one alive. As well as that. Keep going.
The only girl in a family of boys, Leonora Carrington was born on April 6, 1917, at Corley, Lancashire. Her father was an Anglo-Irish Protestant textile magnate. Her mother, a Roman Catholic beauty from Southern Ireland. The family home was a rambling Gothic maison called Crockley Hall, a house whose sinister towers, chimneys, and gables feature in some of her paintings. As a child, she was looked after by an Irish nanny who gave her a love of Irish folklore.
Folklore, the mythology of Ireland. Mythology, yes. Folklore. Okay, I'm going to read this next part a little quickly because I want to get to the debutante. So let me just quickly go over this part here. This is the story I was telling you in the beginning. School discipline came as a shock. She was expelled from one Roman Catholic convent where you become a nun, after another due to her eccentricity, usually a combination of antisocial tendencies with certain supernatural proclivities, whatever that means. One thing she did learn was a love of art. Her father was not keen on her going to art school. Artists live in garrets and die of starvation, he said. But her mother intervened, and she was allowed to study at Mrs. Penrose's Academy of Art in Florence. There, she was exposed to the Italian Renaissance masters, whose love of rich colors were to inspire her later work. She returned to England brimming with enthusiasm, but her father insisted she prepare for a conventional role in life by doing the season. That was a ball held in her honor at the Ritz. She was presented to George V in an agonizingly tight ostrich feather tiara that she threatened to rip off. Okay, this is the part that I wanted to get to.
What does it mean, doing the season?
Doing the ball, the coming out party, where she's presented to society.
Oh.
Her party. So she's going to be.
Her father desired her to live in conventional life. Yeah.
Yeah, and to introduce her to the aristocracy, she was going to be introduced to the King of England, right? So she's going to, start from the top, I guess. So this is the important part. A few years later, in a short story called The Debutante, hey, that should sound familiar. We read that one. She fantasized about a girl who befriends a female hyena at the zoo and decides to have it take her place at her debutante ball. The debutante assists in preparing a disguise for the animal, becomes a willing accomplice in the murder of her maid, Mary, whose face the hyena wears after eating the rest of her. The hyena appeared in a 1937 self-portrait along with two other figures from her short stories, a wild white horse and a white rocking horse. And then it goes on from there. Okay, one more thing. Leonora attended the Chelsea School of Art and then joined the London Academy of the Cubist Amédée Ozenfant. One of her fellow students was Ursula Goldfinger, the wife of the Hungarian revolutionary architect Erno Goldfinger. It was at one of Goldfinger's dinner parties that she first met Max Ernst, who was in London for an exhibition. Max Ernst was 46 and married. Even before they met, the 19-year-old Leonora knew him from his paintings that they were destined for one another. The following year, she ran away to Paris to live with him in rooms on Rue Jacob. So that began her life with the popular people.
What on the Rue Jacob?
The location.
Location.
Hang on a second here.
Location.
I lost it. So
she lived with him. Yeah.
Well, let's find out. Yuki, why don't you continue? Let's find out.
Okay. Their life was complicated. Ernst was still spending time with his wife, but Leonora plunged recklessly into surrealist Paris life. At one smart party, she arrived wearing only a sheet, which she dropped at an opportunity moment. She sat at a restaurant table and covered her feet with mustard and served cold tapioca dyed with squirt ink.
Squid
ink to guests as caviar. Visitor to the Rue Jacob might wake up in the morning to breakfast of omelette full of their own hair, which she had cut while they slept.
Nice. So so she knew how to make friends. She knew how to make friends. Well,
I don't want to be friend with her.
Well, Anton, let's find out what happened next. So you can have a hair omelet, and what else?
She got to know Picasso and Buñuel, uncalled Spaniards, Dalí, Man Ray, Miro, Breton, Tanguy, Barrett, Belmar, Arp, and many others. With her wild dark beauty, she looked the perfect submissive
femme enfant,
but she rejected the notion of being anyone's muse. All that means is that you are someone else's object, and was quick to snap if anyone took her for granted.
No.
When John Miro When John Miro gave her some money and told her to get him some cigarettes, she told him to bloody well get them himself. Dalí won her approval by calling her a most important woman artist, and her work was shown at exhibitions along with the work of Meret Oppenheim, Remedios Varo, Aline Agar, and other women.
Okay, so she wasn't going to be put in second place. We'll put it that way.
She's a real artist, and maybe she has a strong self-consciousness, no?
Sounds like it. I especially like the fact that she cuts off people's hair at night. In 1938, Ernst finally left his wife, and he and Leonora moved to Provence, where, in addition to painting, she began to write stories. She contributed to André Breton's anthology of black humor, first published in 1939, but on the outbreak of war, Ernst, a German, was arrested as an enemy alien by the French. Freed for a short while, he was soon interned again by the Germans after the invasion of France for practicing degenerate art. Oh, that's right. If you did art, the Nazis thought you were
degenerate art. I know. Yes. Just in this week, I watched the program. Aman Paul on CNN.
Right.
Yes, special edition about degenerate art by the German by Nazi.
Yes. They tried to use it as an argument.
Yes.
That these were sick minds. That if you weren't painting architectural straight lines, that there was something wrong with you. They tried to use it as evidence. There's a documentary I saw a long time ago about that, about the aesthetics of the Third Reich and the whole idea of classifying people by the types of drawings they produced. But
yes, literally abstraction art and including surrealism it's a target of the degenerate art. Nazi gathered such art and gave an exposition as a degenerate. Yes, a degenerate art, and denounced them of the unfairness to the country.
Yeah, that's right. There was an exhibition. I remember, actually.
Yes.
Well, why don't we finish this article and call it a day, because we're running over time here. So let's just finish this part. It's kind of short. I'll tell you what. I'll take this part, and then you continue. At the age of 23, broad and alone, Leonora Carrington had a mental breakdown. I wept for hours down in the village, she recalled. Then I went up to my house, where for 24 hours I indulged in voluntary vomiting induced by drinking orange blossom water and interrupted by a short nap. A trip to Spain in search of a visa for Ernst ended her incarceration in a Spanish mental institution, where she was treated with cardiazol, a drug which induced spasms and hallucinations. Okay, Yuki, let's find out what happened.
A short biography in one of the collections of her fiction included the gloriously unlikely sentence, subjected to horrifying treatment in Madrid asylum. She was rescued by her nanny, who arrived in submarine.
Right. Of course.
Really? The facts are equally bizarre. Leonora's father sent a business contact to get her out of hospital and put her on the ship to South Africa. The plan was to have her admitted to a sanatorium there. But waiting for the boat in Lisbon, Leonora gave her
minders,
the
people who are watching her. The minders are the people watching her.
Minders the slip, jumped into the taxi and said the first thing that came into her head: "Take me to the Mexican embassy." One of her friends in Paris had been a Mexican diplomat, Leonardo Dedius, a friend of Picasso's, who was now in Lisbon.
Anton, let's find out what happens next. Shall we?
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. His solution to her predicament was to marry her and take her to America. While they,
you know. Why not just marry her? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
While they were waiting in Lisbon for the boat to the United States, Ernst arrived in town, having escaped from internment with the art collector Peggy Guggenheim, whom he would later marry. In tow, along with her ex-husband, Ernst's ex-wife, and a collection of children. This somewhat awkward situation marked the end of Leonora's relationship with Ernst, and it seemed of her memories of their relationship. You haven't asked me about my sex life with Max, she challenged an interviewer years later. The question, when it came, only prompted the vague reply: "I can't remember, but it was probably common garden variety sex."
There you go. Nice. After a few months in New York, Leonora and Deluc dissolved their marriage, and she moved to Mexico City, where a few years later she met and married Chiki Weiss, a Hungarian surrealist photographer. It's with its Aztec and Mayan history and its cult of the dead, Mexico suited Leonora Carrington, giving her new inspiration and a new circle of friends. Among them, Frida Kahlo and Remedios Vero. Vero became her confidant, and together they experimented with alchemy, the Kabbalah, and the teachings of Popol Vuh, the sacred book of Maya. Two women explored the magic within women's domestic lives in their paintings, and Leonora celebrated their friendships in The Hearing Trumpet, a novel about an elderly lady whose family conspire to pack her off to an institution run by the Well of Light Brotherhood, who are financed by a prominent American cereal company. The old lady's friend, Carmela, who gives her the gift of a huge hearing trumpet, you know, like before hearing aids, you have to put a little trumpet next to your ear in the old days, which enables her to listen in on the plot, is thought to be based on Vero. The story pokes fun at an earlier generation of male surrealists. Even Buckingham Palace has a large reproduction of Magritte's famous slice of ham with an eye peering out. It hangs, I believe, in the throne room. Yeah, okay. There we go. Leonora Carrington's great patron, Edward James, who arranged her first solo show at Pierre Matisse's gallery in New York in 1947. By 1960, she was well known in Europe and Mexico, and later that year, a retrospective of her work was held in Mexico. By that time, she was not only painting, but had created tapestries, collages, sculptures, written articles, stories, essays, and poetry as well. She lived for spells in New York and Chicago. She remained in Mexico City for the rest of her life, though, in her colorful turn of phrase, like a hen on a hot griddle, she retained the Irishisms of her youth. Leonora Carrington, whose death was announced in Mexico on the 26th of May, was appointed OBE in 2000. Her husband preceded her in 2007. She's survived by her two sons. So this is from 2011. Well,
She had a child.
Which is Irishism.
Irishisms. The Irish have that gift for language, Irishisms, the kinds of expressions that only come out of Ireland. You know, like top of the morning to you. I don't know what they are. Those special phrases that come out of Irish culture, Irishisms. So you have to read a lot of Joyce, I guess, to get them. Irishisms. Clear? Not clear?
Yeah.
I don't have them memorized, but kind of poetic language, I guess you could say. Well, we're going to have to stop here, everyone. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed the stories. There's something a little bit different, and I hope.
What adventurous life she had in her life.
She was pretty cool.
She's life story is maybe more interesting than her story. Maybe I don't know.
Very possibly. And yet, no one's ever going to make a film about her because she's just not well known enough. But what a great film that would be, huh?
Sounds a little crazy if her life is shoot by film.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll make a film about this.
You know,
Think about it.
I'd glad to watch it.
Cool. All right, everyone, we've got to stop now. Have a good rest of the weekend. And remember, I got my schedule back, so on Monday I'll be meeting you an hour early. I think the next 2 weeks it's 11 to 12 GMT, and then after that it's 10 to 12 GMT. No more Saturdays after today, okay, just so you know. If there's a special time or a special class, you can always send me a message, and I will try to make time for you. But you've got to request it. Otherwise, it'll be just mornings from now on. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Time.
Thank you for the interesting story.
Thanks
I like
for
it
sticking
very
around.
much. Take care.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a good night.
See you.
See you.
Have a good night. See you.